over 3 million square kilometers of land, and no major city. Northern Australia remains one of the emptiest developed regions in the world. Nearly 90% of Australians live in cities, but almost all of those cities are crowded along the southern and eastern edges of the country. Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, they're still growing fast. Meanwhile, in the vast north, towns are few and far between. The Northern Territory alone is twice the size of Texas, but has fewer people than a mid-sized American suburb. Darwin is the North's biggest city, but its entire setup was built for just 150,000 people. So why hasn't the North followed the same path as the South? Why, with all that space and all those resources, has no major city ever taken root? Today, we explore the deep reasons behind this, from climate and geography to history, economy, and the choices that still shape Australia today. Harsh, tropical climate and extreme weather. Northern Australia is hot, humid, and wild, especially during the summer months. Places like Darwin can get over 1,500 millimeters of rain a year, but not all year round. Most of it pours down in just a few months. From November to April, the wet season brings thick humidity, heavy storms, and powerful cyclones. During this time, temperatures stay around 84 degrees Fahrenheit, but it feels even hotter because of the moisture in the air. Then comes the dry season, which is cooler, but still warm, and very dusty. Big storms like Cyclone Tracy in 1974 once tore through Darwin, destroying thousands of homes and almost flattening the city. Tracy destroyed 60% of homes in Darwin, forcing the government to completely change building codes for cyclone protection. Flooding can cut off roads and isolate communities for days or even weeks. Because of this, it costs a lot more to build homes and roads strong enough to survive the weather and to cool homes during the long, hot months. Because of all this, large-scale urban development in the north has remained limited, especially compared to the more temperate and predictable climates down south. Poor soil and arid interior. Even if the weather weren't a problem, Northern Australia still faces a major challenge: the land itself. Much of the region is made up of thin, dry, and nutrient-poor soils that simply aren't good for growing crops. In fact, even though the north receives a large share of Australia's rainfall, most of that water runs off quickly. The land can't hold it well. Farmers often need to add heavy amounts of fertilizer just to get anything to grow, and in many places, that still isn't enough. Along the coast, salty soils and sandy ground make farming even harder, while flat terrain and thick mangroves can block the building of deep-water ports. Only about 1/3 of the Northern Territory gets enough rain for farming, and even then, the soil quality is often too poor for large-scale agriculture. This matters because, throughout history, big cities usually grow near fertile land where food is easy to produce and trade can thrive. Without rich farmland, there's no strong reason for large populations to settle and grow. The usual path to building a big city just doesn't work here. Instead, the North relies on industries like mining and defense, which don't bring in as many people, and that's another reason urban growth here has stayed small and spread out. History. On top of the harsh climate and poor soil, history played a big role in shaping where Australians live today. When the British arrived in 1788, they settled first at Sydney on the southeastern coast, where the weather was cooler and the land felt more familiar to them. Over the next 50 years, they built new colonies in other temperate places: Hobart, Brisbane, Perth, Adelaide, and Melbourne, all in the south or east. These areas were easier to farm, easier to live in, and quickly became the heart of the new country. By the time Darwin was officially settled in the north in 1869, cities like Melbourne were already booming with roads, railways, and growing industries. Because the south had such a big head start, it kept attracting more people, more money, and more development, while the north stayed small and remote. Gold rushes, farming, and trade routes all helped the southern cities grow even faster, creating a strong economic and cultural pull that's still felt today. Meanwhile, northern towns struggled to compete, and plans to turn them into major cities often failed due to distance, isolation, and tough conditions. That early southern focus set a pattern that's been very hard to change, and it's a big reason why the north has yet to grow into a major urban center. Capital-intensive industries. With farming limited by the land, much of the North's economy has turned to something else: mining and gas. The Northern Territory holds huge reserves of uranium, bauxite, manganese, and natural gas, and these resources bring in a lot of money. In fact, mining and petroleum make up nearly 1/5 of the territory's total economic value. But while these industries are big in dollars, they don't create that many jobs. Most of the work is done by machines and large-scale equipment, not by thousands of people working side by side. Even during busy times, towns may see short bursts of growth, but once the mining slows down, things often quiet down again. This pattern makes it hard to build up the kind of everyday businesses, like schools, stores, and hospitals, that help cities grow strong over time. Unlike farming or manufacturing, which support a wide range of jobs and families, mining towns are often focused on just one thing. That's why many northern towns serve more as temporary service hubs for industry rather than as big, balanced cities full of long-term residents. Service-based economy. Aside from mining, the North's economy also leans heavily on the services sector. Over half of the Northern Territory's jobs and economic output come from services like public administration, defense, and tourism. Darwin, for example, is home to military bases, government offices, and growing tourism around natural parks and Aboriginal culture. These jobs are important. They help keep local communities running and bring in visitors from around the world. But these industries don't usually drive big population growth on their own. Many rely on government funding or changing travel trends, which means they can go up and down over time. Tourism creates jobs, but mostly in smaller towns or seasonal roles, not the kind of steady employment that builds big cities from the ground up. That's why places like Darwin feel more like regional service centers than major cities, with a wide mix of industries and people. They serve important roles, but their economies aren't large or varied enough to spark the kind of fast, long-term urban growth seen in the South. Infrastructure and isolation. Even when there's money to invest, Northern Australia faces another major barrier: the challenge of building and maintaining infrastructure. Roads and rail lines stretch over huge distances, often through flood-prone or cyclone-hit areas that get washed out during the wet season. Many roads are just one lane each way, and when bridges go under or break down, entire communities can be cut off for days. Power grids and water systems in places like Darwin already struggle with peak demand, especially during military exercises or heavy storms. The sewer system in Darwin, for example, was built for about 150,000 people, and it's already pushed to its limits during the wet season. When the dry months come, water supplies can drop to dangerous levels, especially if the army or large groups are training nearby. Adding to the problem, most of Australia's fuel is imported, and the North's remoteness makes it hard to keep steady fuel supplies in a crisis. All of this makes building a big, modern city incredibly expensive, and fragile systems mean more repairs, more delays, and more cost. High costs and limited scale. Living and working in Northern Australia can also be surprisingly expensive. Goods and materials often have to travel thousands of kilometers to reach remote towns, and bad weather can delay deliveries for days or even weeks. Building anything, from houses to hospitals, takes more time, more money, and often requires special designs that can handle the heat, floods, and cyclones. Because of this, businesses face higher costs, and it's harder to attract workers or keep services running year-round. Fewer people means fewer customers, and that means many shops, restaurants, and services can't afford to stay open unless prices go up. That's what experts call thin markets, where there aren't enough buyers to keep things cheap or competitive. This creates a tricky cycle. High costs keep people away, and low population keeps costs high. And while support from the government helps, growing a big city in the north would require huge, long-term investment just to catch up, let alone take off. Limited education and healthcare hubs. In places like Sydney or Melbourne, you'll find multiple world-class universities, major hospitals, and cultural centers all in one place. But in the Northern Territory, there's just one main university and a smaller hospital network spread across a vast area. That means young people who want to study medicine, science, or the arts often have to move south to find more options. Once they're there, they often stay, building their lives and careers around those big southern cities. Without strong schools, research centers, and healthcare, it's tough to attract the kind of long-term residents who help cities thrive. Northern Australia is big, important, and beautiful, but it's not easy to build a big city there. The land, the weather, and the long distances make it hard and costly to grow like the South. Even so, it holds some of the country's most stunning landscapes, deep cultural heritage, and vital national roles in defense, ecology, and resource supply. Thanks so much for watching. If you've lived in or visited the North, or if you've got thoughts on what you've seen today, leave a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. See you in the next video.